Hello and welcome to part 4 of this tutorial series. In this tutorial I am going to show you how I processed my bass line and vocals. For this track I did not feel that it needed a complicated bass line, so I just made it quite a simple melody with two different elements. There is a sub-bass layer and a mid-bass layer with some tape delay added to it. So, let's start by looking at how I created my sub-bass layer. There are many different methods and plugins and synths that you can use to create your sub-bass. Because this track is generally all sample-driven, I decided to use a bass sample and throw it in the pt4. The original bass sample was a slightly distorted 808 bass sample, so it had plenty of frequency content in the mid-range. When sampling for sub-bass, this is quite an important thing to ask yourself. So next time you want to sample something for your sub-bass, ask yourself, has the original sample got plenty of content in the mid-range? If it does, then your sub-bass will have more tone to it and it will therefore be the more prominent in your mix. So looking back at the pt4 now, if I click on the edit button, you will see that I have spread my bass sample to play across 3 octaves. This is the first thing to do when you are sampling anything. Make sure that it can play at different pitches. Looking back at the interface, the next thing I have done is I have brought the cutoff down to take off the top end of the bass sample. This just leaves the sub area booming nicely. I then shape my sound more appropriately by routing the filter cutoff to envelope 1 and adjusting the decay slider. Boom. Now let's have a look at what processing has taken place in the inserts panel. I have started off by adding some compression. So let's open this and have a look at my settings. I have used a relatively small ratio with a short attack time, but with a long release. What I was trying to do with these compressor settings was to mainly bring the low notes up in volume but without making the higher notes too loud. So by bringing the gain up and by bringing the threshold down, I have effectively made the bass more even in volume. The next bit of processing I have used in my inserts is the FabFilter EQ. The reason I have used this EQ is for its mid-side function. What this allows you to do is EQ the mono and stereo parts of the bass separately. So as you can see here, I have low cut the mono part of my bass at 30 Hz, but the stereo part is cut around 100 Hz. The reason for this is because most of our low end will be mono, and our high end, stereo. So we might as well cut out the stereo information from the bottom end to clear up some extra room for the sub-bass to come out. Finally, I have placed a cut around 100 Hz. Remember, this is where the kick has been boosted. The last thing I have added to my inserts is an adaptive limiter. This is also like a loudness maximizer and it brings the bass up a bit louder without ruining the dynamics too badly. Now, because I have some extra time with this video, I will touch on the vocals very quickly too. First of all, I cut off the low end and my EQ and applied a few cuts. This was a rawly recorded vocal, so there were lots of problem areas with it. As mentioned before in this tutorial series, the alloy EQ is fantastic for tonal shaping when it comes to making a vocal or lead sit nicely in your mix. So next up in the inserts I have used Alloy's EQ, and as you can see, I have used the EQ in a very subtractive way. Instead of boosting the nice bits of the vocal, I cut away the parts that were interfering with the other elements of the track. Next up, I have added some compression. For recorded vocals I like to use the TubeTech CL1B compressor by SoftTube. If you have any spare time, have a look at different third-party compressors, read up on the reviews because some of them help you achieve better results for certain tasks. The last and final step of processing is to add a bit of top-end excitement to the vocal to bring it out a tiny bit more. For this, Ozone's multi-band exciter works a treat. After processing the vocal, I create a few sends to add some reverb and some delay at the end of each phrase. That, my friend, is about it. Hopefully you have seen a few new and interesting ways to work in your own production. If you want the free download of the tune, then just follow the link below. Thanks for watching, see you next time.